Good day sa inyong lahat. Ito si Attorney Chato Olivas and welcome to this new episode of Easy Law Online. Itong video na to ay nirecord ko para sa paying members ng Easy Law Online. And this is 95 things to remember about evidence. Pero bago ako mag-umpisa, gusto ko lang i-remind na meron din akong video on 50 things to remember about settlement of estate of deceased persons. And ang purpose nito, ng aking series na to, is to help those who are studying the law at saka yung those who are reviewing for the bar to guide them in these subjects, to guide you in these subjects. Kaya ang tawag ko dito ay bar review guide for my members. So umpisahan na natin ito. Okay. First, we talk about the general principles and rules, general principles and the rules on admissibility. So that's Rule 128. So number one, ano ang ibig sabihin ng evidence? Ito ay makikita natin sa Rule 128, Section 1. According to this rule, evidence is the means sanctioned by the rules of court for ascertaining in a judicial proceeding the truth respecting a matter of facts. I-emphasize ko dito, judicial proceedings. Ibig sabihin, ito ay dapat nangyayari sa court. These are proceedings that take place in court. They do not apply to administrative proceedings such as labor proceedings before the labor arbiters under the National Labor Relations Commission. Kaya nga, ang rules na to ay patungkol sa court, rules of court. So we only refer to judicial proceedings. Okay? And then it says here, it's for the purpose of ascertaining the truth respecting a matter of facts. So kapag nag-handle tayo ng case, or when we're talking about cases, we're only talking about two kinds of issues, factual issues at legal issues. Kapag factual issues, we are referring to the rules on evidence. Kapag legal issues, we are referring to the applicable law and jurisprudence. Since we are talking about evidence, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito sa lesson na to ay patungkol sa factual issues. And so, it is the way of ascertaining the truth respecting a matter of fact. The only way we can determine the truth is through the evidence that we present. Even if what we know is true, if there is no evidence, then we cannot prove that as a truth before a court of law. So remember that. Number two, ano yung scope of application ng rules na ito? It applies to all actions and proceedings, but special rules apply to specific cases. So lahat ng actions, lahat ng ordinary civil actions, lahat ng special civil actions, lahat ng special proceedings, these rules on evidence will apply. Kaya lang, for specific cases, may special rules on evidence. Halimbawa, sa summary procedure, okay, walang trial, meron lang submission of position paper. Alright? So summary procedure in civil cases. So may special rules of evidence for summary procedure. Also, for the rule on examination of child witnesses, may special rules din. Halimbawa, yung rule on hearsay. That is, there is an exception for examination of child witnesses as long as the hearsay evidence can be corroborated independently. Number three, what are the admissibility requisites? So before evidence can be admitted by the court as evidence, ano ang requirement? Under Section 3, dapat evidence must be both relevant and competent. Dalawang elements yan, ha? Dapat relevant, dapat competent, and they must concur before the court will admit a piece of evidence as such as evidence. So pag-usapan natin, di sabi natin, it must be relevant and competent. Anong ibig sabihin ng relevant? So point number 4, Evidence is relevant when it has such a relation to a fact in issue as to induce belief in its existence or non-existence. So dapat may kinalaman yung ebidensya tungkol dun sa factual issue na pinaglalabanan ng mga parties. Eh kung wala namang relasyon ang piece of evidence na yon, it will be irrelevant and therefore objectionable. Kaya lang may exception na sabi dun sa rules of court natin, evidence on collateral matter shall not be allowed. Yung mga walang kinalaman, hindi yan papayagan except when it tends in any reasonable degree to establish the probability or improbability of a fact in issue. Halimbawa, okay, in a murder case, yung proof of the lighting situation is generally collateral in nature. Hindi siya talaga relevant. Hindi siya, wala siyang kinalaman except that if it is required to prove whether or not the face of the offender can be seen. And in that case, it tends in any reasonable degree to establish the probability or improbability of the fact in issue, such as the identity of the offended party. In that case, then it will be allowed. Now, di ba sabi natin, evidence is admissible when it is relevant and competent. Ano naman yung competent? Ito. Evidence is competent when it is not excluded by the law or the rules of court. So, even if it tends to prove a fact in issue, if it is excluded by the rules, it is not competent. Halimbawa, yung exclusionary rules under the Constitution. As when evidence is obtained without a search warrant, when the situation does not come under any of the exceptions to the need for a search warrant. In that case, evidence will be incompetent because it violates exclusionary rules. Another situation is the rules on privileged communication. May mga ebidensya na hindi pwedeng i-present, such as the confession of a penitent to a priest or the confidential information given by a client to an attorney. Those are privileged communication which will not be competent. They will be excluded by the rules. Point number 8, preponderance of evidence. Ito yung standard of proof in civil cases. Paano natin malalaman if there is preponderance of evidence? If, the court will consider the following: all the facts and circumstances of the case, the witness's manner of testifying, the intelligence of the witness, the opportunity and means of knowing the facts to which they are testifying, the nature of the facts to which they testify, the probability or improbability of their testimony, kung kapanipaniwala o hindi, their interest or want of interest in the subject matter of the case. Kung meron silang vested interest, maaapektuhan yung credibility nila. Okay, and then also their credibility. The court may also consider the number of witnesses kung para masabi if there is preponderance of evidence, although hindi talaga yon main consideration. Kasi katulad nga nung sinulat ko dito, it is the quality of the evidence that is important rather than the number of witnesses or the number of documentary evidence or the number of real evidence. So it is the quality of the evidence. Point number 9, proof beyond reasonable doubt. Ito yung standard of proof in criminal cases. So anong ibig sabihin? Proof beyond reasonable doubt does not mean such degree of proof excluding the possibility of error that produces absolute certainty. So hindi natin kailangan ng absolute certainty. Although sinasabi natin beyond reasonable doubt. Anong kailangan? Moral certainty. Okay? Or that degree of proof which produces conviction in an unprejudiced mind. So if the evidence leaves any significant doubt that would cause a reasonable person to hesitate or question the guilt of an accused, then moral certainty has not been achieved and a conviction does not stand. In other words, kung i-consider mo yung totality of evidence, pwedeng i-interpret one in favor of the guilt of an accused, and the other in favor of the innocence of the accused, that has not met the requirement of proof beyond reasonable doubt. In that case, since you could interpret it in either way, you always interpret it in favor of the innocence of the accused, and therefore the accused should be acquitted. Tandaan mo, we have the presumption of innocence. So that already weighs in favor of the accused. Malakas ang ebidensya na kailangan to overturn that presumption of innocence. Number 10, clear and convincing evidence. By jurisprudence, this is a higher civil case standard for certain types of cases, like cases challenging official acts or cases proving fraud. Ang clear and convincing evidence is between preponderance of evidence and beyond reasonable doubt. So dapat yung party presenting the evidence must convince the judge that it is highly probable or reasonably certain that their version of the facts is true. The evidence must be clear, direct, weighty, and producing a firm belief or conviction in the truth of the allegations. So examples of when clear and convincing evidence is required, that's point 11. In administrative or disciplinary cases against lawyers or judges, sabi ng Supreme Court, disbarment or suspension of lawyers and disciplinary actions against judges require clear and convincing evidence of the alleged misconduct. This is due to the serious consequence of their professional standing and reputation. Cases involving public officials, so in certain administrative charges against public officials, especially those involving grave offenses like gross misconduct. Okay, corruption, immorality. Sabi ng Supreme Court, kailangan clear and convincing evidence before a public officer can be removed or subjected to disciplinary action. Number 12, substantial evidence. Ito naman, ito yung evidence required in administrative or quasi-judicial bodies. So, ang standard of proof na to is such amount of relevant evidence which a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to justify a conclusion. Ito ay mababang weight of evidence. Kaya ito ang kailangan sa administrative proceedings. Okay. Except for those that I mentioned earlier, in which the Supreme Court requires clear and convincing evidence. 13, judicial notice. O eto naman yung judicial notice. Ito yung when the court takes cognizance of facts na wala nang kailangan na presentation of evidence. I-accept na lang ito ng court as a fact. Now, there are two kinds. Mandatory judicial notice and discretionary judicial notice. So, Rule 129, Section 1 enumerates the different the different facts which are already admitted by the court even without evidence. Ito yung mandatory judicial notice. Existence and territorial extent of states, their political history, forms of government, and symbols of nationality, the law of nations, the admiralty and maritime courts of the world and their seals, the potential constitution, political constitution and history of the Philippines, official acts of the legislative, executive, and judicial departments of the national government of the Philippines. So, ino-note lang natin dito. Yung ito tinutukoy dito, yun lang sa national government. So, yung batas na national, yung executive issuances na national, yun lang ang i-consider na matter of judicial notice. Of course, yung judicial departments, syempre, na official acts of the judicial departments. Alright, na of the national government. Alright, so kapag local government ordinance, hindi yun considered matters of mandatory judicial notice. Kailangan i-prove yung local ordinance sa court. And then other matters, laws of nature, measure of time, geographical divisions are also considered mandatory judicial notice. Now, let's go to discretionary judicial notice. Ito yung nasa section 2. Ito naman, hindi siya mandatory judicial notice, pero the party can file a motion for the judge to consider something a matter of judicial knowledge, notice. Basta isa sa mga sumusunod. Note, hindi ito requisites na dapat mag-concur. Isa lang ang kailangan. Una, it is a matter of public knowledge or a matter of notoriety or a matter of capable of unquestionable demonstration or a matter that ought to be known to judges because of their judicial functions. So halimbawa, alam natin, a matter of public notice na at a certain time of the day, the EDSA, yung Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, EDSA, is sobrang traffic at certain times of the day, kaya nga may number coding. So pwedeng the judge can take discretionary judicial notice of that. And the traffic situation it should be relevant to the case in order for the judge to be asked to take discretionary judicial notice. Siyempre, kailangan may motion kang ifa-file. Motion for the judge to consider something as a matter of discretionary judicial notice. Alright? Oh, so yun ang example, yung traffic sa EDSA or in certain locations kapag pag umulan lang ng konti, mataas na kaagad ang baha. For example, yung Espanya Avenue in front of the University of Santo Tomas, konting ulan lang, mataas na kaagad ang baha. So that can be considered a matter of discretionary judicial notice. And kailan kailangan mag-present, kailan kailangan hingiin to sa judge? O for example, may mga estudyante na nagko-cross ng street in front of UST at nakuryente sila because of the flood and the effect of the electrical wires that fell on the flood waters. So, pwedeng sabihin, can we take judicial notice in a discretionary way of the fact that the floods are this high and that if the wire falls upon the waters, ma-electrocute yung water and the people who are crossing the waters. So, yun yung isang situation when discretionary judicial notice would be important. So, yun yung mga hindi na kailangan i-prove, yung matters of judicial notice. Another set of facts na kailangan hindi na i-prove is yung number 16, judicial admissions, section 4. A judicial admission is conclusive upon the party making them. So, under section 4, an admission, oral or written, made by the party in the course of the proceedings in the same case does not require proof. The admission may be contradicted only by showing that it was made through palpable mistake or that the imputed admission was not in fact made. Pwedeng maggawa itong admission na to sa pleadings or during the trial or during the proceedings like during pre-trial where the parties may be allowed to stipulate or admit certain facts. Hindi na yung kailangan i-prove. Alright? So again, dalawang bagay ang pwedeng hindi na kailangan i-prove: matters of judicial notice and judicial admissions. So punta tayo sa point 17, and this now we deal with object, documentary, and testimonial evidence. Ano ba ang object evidence? Ito ay evidence that is directly addressed to the senses of the court, and this is also known as real evidence. Katulad ng physical objects found at the crime scene, photographs and videos, pero ito, I have to tell you, photographs and videos are considered documentary evidence. Kaya lang, yung existence of the photographs, yan yung pwedeng i-consider na object evidence kung yun ang gusto mong i-prove. Or the existence of a video recording can be real evidence if what you want to prove is the existence of the video recording itself. But as to the contents, okay, and authenticity, that will be considered documentary evidence. I have to be very clear about that. So titignan natin later yung definition ng documentary evidence. And then also documents can be considered real evidence when what you want to prove is the existence of the documents and the physical characteristics of the documents, like in forgery cases. But the document itself, if you want to prove the document and its contents, all right, that will be considered documentary and not real evidence. Next, samples like blood or DNA samples, those are considered real or object evidence. Now, how do you authenticate object evidence? It must first be shown to be the very thing in question. Siyempre, when you say object evidence, you got it from a certain place. And from the time it was taken from a certain place up to the time it is now presented before the judge, you must be able to prove that it is the very same thing. Okay? Kasi maaaring magkaroon na ng palitan in the course of time and because of the custody. So, hindi yun ma-authenticate. Kung ganun, dapat i-prove mo that it's the very same thing that was taken from, let's say, the scene of the crime. So, for instance, the party must prove that the thing you are presenting before the judge is the same thing that the investigating officer took at the crime scene. Remember that the possession of evidence passes from person to person from the time it is taken at the scene of the crime. So a blood-stained knife found at the crime scene may be submitted by the investigator to the crime laboratory for examination for fingerprints and blood type. So the markings on the evidence must be preserved, and there must be proof of proper turnover from one person to another until the evidence is presented before the judge. So the marking of the evidence is done when the evidence is taken at the scene of the crime. And that marking must be preserved until the evidence is submitted before the judge. All right? And then it must be shown that there is no contamination or there is nothing intervening in that chain. So, punta na tayo sa number 19, chain of custody. This is crucial for fungible or easily contaminated objects like drugs and firearms. Pag sinabi nating fungible, ito yung madaling palitan or mutually replaceable with another item of the same kind. For example, money, marijuana, or shabu. Pwedeng madaling maging palitan, fungible, easily interchangeable. All right? So the chain of custody must be proven. And so that was also what I was discussing in item number 18. 18 and 19 are connected. Okay, so ito yung authentication of object evidence and the chain of custody. The chain of custody must be unbroken from the time the evidence is taken at the scene of the crime until it is presented to the judge. It must be unbroken. Sa documentary evidence naman, ito yung definition ng documentary evidence sa rules of court. Documents as evidence consist of writings, recordings, photographs, or any material containing letters, words, sounds, numbers, figures, symbols, or their equivalent, or other modes of written expression offered as proof of their contents. Note, photographs include still pictures, drawings, stored images, X-ray films, motion pictures, or videos. All right? So, motion pictures or videos are not real evidence, but they are documentary evidence. Unless, of course, like I mentioned earlier, what you want to present is the existence of the motion picture or X-ray film itself without looking at the contents. So, ang best evidence rule, tingnan natin. Best evidence rule is also known as the original document rule. This applies only to the contents of a document. All right? So best evidence rule, your memory aid here is BER or BER. Under Section 3, original document must be produced and there are exemptions. So when the subject of inquiry is the contents of a document, writing, recording, photograph, or other record, no evidence is admissible other than the original document itself. Emphasis, contents of the document. All right? Now, there are exceptions to the best evidence rule. And these are as follows. Your memory aid is LOMNPN. Okay? Loman pen. Lost, destroyed, original in possession of adverse party, multiple originals, numerous accounts, public record, or not related. So isa-isahin natin ito. Sections 3 to 7 of Rule 130. A. When the original is lost or destroyed or cannot be produced in court without bad faith on the part of the offeror. Letter B. When the original is in the custody or control of the party against whom the evidence is offered and the latter fails to produce it after reasonable notice or the original cannot be obtained by local judicial processes or procedures. Okay, dun muna sa A. When the original is lost or destroyed or cannot be produced in court, hindi mahanap yung original. So you want to present the original, hindi mo mahanap kasi nasira or nawala. And wala namang kinalaman yung party who is presenting it. Kaya sabi, without bad faith on the part of the offerer, then you can present secondary evidence. Yung sabi naman, yung original, hawak-hawak ng kalaban. Ayaw niyang i-produce, ayaw niyang pakita sa'yo, ayaw niyang i-produce sa court. Then you can present secondary evidence. O, doon tayo sa number 3. When the original consists of numerous accounts or other documents which cannot be examined in court without great loss of time, and the fact sought to be established is the general result of the whole. For example, accounting records for 1 year. Pagkakapal-kapal na ng mga accounting records na to. Ang gusto mo lang naman i-present is the total. The total of what of the entries in the accounting records. Hindi mo na kailangan i-present yung original. Okay, you can present secondary evidence. Letter D. When the original is a public record in the custody of a public officer or recorded in a public office. For example, yung titulo ng lupa, the original is with the Register of Deeds. Okay? So, hindi mo naman maipresent yung original na yon. Well, what the owners really have is called the owner's duplicate. Okay? Owner's duplicate. And then letter E, when the original is not closely related to a controlling issue. Ano bang ibig sabihin yan? Not closely related to a controlling issue. So, ginawa ko siyang point number 23. Example. Example, proving notice. If the controlling issue is whether or not notice was sent and received to a party and a witness testifies to mailing the notice and another witness testifies to receiving it, the fact of the notice's existence might be proven without needing the original copy to examine its exact contents, unless the content itself is disputed. So, ang kailangan mo lang dyan, yung testimony ng witness, the one who mailed it, testimony of the other witness who received it. All right? They can prove the existence of the notice kahit wala yung original notice itself. All right? So, dun tayo sa secondary evidence rule. Secondary evidence. This is either a copy or a recital of its contents, meaning yung manilalaman ng documentary evidence is reproduced somewhere else. And then also by testimony. And it says here, know the hierarchy. Ang una mong ipopresent is the copy. Kung wala, you can present a recital of the contents and then testimony of the witness on the contents. So section 5. when original document is unavailable, when the original document has been lost or destroyed or cannot be produced in court. The offeror, upon proof of its execution or existence and the cause of its unavailability without bad faith on his or her part, may prove its contents by a copy. So, pwedeng photocopy or by recital of its contents in some authentic document. Let us say the contents of the document were reproduced in another, were written in some other authentic document. Yung authentic document na yon, pwedeng i-present. Or the testimony of witnesses na nakakaalam nung content. So the witnesses will testify kung ano ang nilalaman ng dokumento. Now let's go to parole evidence rule. PER or PER, that's your memory aid. Okay? Now this applies to written agreements. Ang sinasabi dito, kung ano ang nakasulat sa dokumento na agreement, agreement, not just any document. Lahat na ng mga terms and conditions ay nakapaloob na dun sa agreement na yon. At hindi pwedeng mag-introduce ng other terms and conditions na hindi nakapaloob sa document na yon. Now, this is a general rule because there are exceptions. So, basahin muna natin yung general rule, section 10. When the terms of an agreement have been reduced to writing, it is considered as containing all the terms and conditions agreed upon. Okay? So lahat ng mga pinag-usapan nandun na sa kasulatan. And there can be, as between the parties and their successors in interest, no evidence of such terms other than the contents of the written agreement. Hindi pwedeng mag-introduce ng mga iba at sabihin, ay kulang yung mga terms and conditions kasi the parties agreed on other terms and conditions. Again, this is the general rule because there are exceptions, and these are the exceptions. Okay? IFVO, IFVO. So, I for intrinsic ambiguity, F for failure to express the true intent of the parties, V is there is a question on the validity of the agreement, and O, other terms. There is the existence of other terms. So, tignan natin ano yung sinasabi ng Section 10 of Rule 130. A party may present evidence to modify, explain, or add to the terms of the written agreement if he or she puts in issue in a verified pleading. Okay? So, dapat maglagay siya, gawin niyang issue in a verified pleading. Letter A. There is an intrinsic ambiguity, mistake, or imperfection in the written agreement. Kaya merong additional terms and conditions na ginawa ang parties. Letter B. Failure of the written agreement to express the true intent and agreement of the parties. So for example, it is an installment sale pero ang ginawa nila is real estate mortgage. Okay, nagkamali sila or maybe because they just copied a document from the internet. They are not lawyers and pero ang intention nila is for there to be a sale by installment and not a mortgage. So the document itself failed to express their true intent and agreement. Ang pwedeng gawin dyan is reformation of the instrument under Rule 64 of the Rules of Court. Right? So letter C, when there is an issue as to validity of the written agreement, all right, so there can be other terms and conditions that to be introduced, okay, and then to establish the issue, to question the validity of the written agreement. Okay, D, existence of other terms and conditions agreed to by the parties or their successors in interest after the written agreement. And the term agreement includes wills. So may mga agreement yung parties na hindi nakasama dun sa written agreement kasi yung agreements in being introduced now were made after the written agreement was made. Pwede yun. That's one of the exceptions. Now, how do you authenticate private documents? Section 20. You must prove its due execution and authenticity You must prove it through the handwriting. The handwriting of the parties must be proven through the testimony of the witnesses. Section 20. Before any private document offered as authentic is received in evidence, its due execution and authenticity must be proven by any of the following means. Letter A, anyone who saw the document executed or written. So, there must be somebody, a witness, na nakita nila na ginagawa yung dokumento at pinipirmahan. Letter B, evidence of the genuineness of the signature or handwriting of the maker. Maaring hindi nila nakita habang ginagawa yung dokumento pero alam nila yung pirma. Alam nila yung handwriting. They can authenticate by identifying the signature and the handwriting. And other evidence showing its due execution and authenticity. Ano to? For example, walang nakakita ng handwriting. Habang sinusulat yung the document, habang pinipirmahan, pero they can present expert testimony to prove the genuineness and due execution of the handwriting and signature. Ang mangyayari dito, magkakaroon ng comparative examination by expert witnesses, and then they will make their conclusion and findings after the comparative examination and handwriting and signature analysis. How do you prove public documents? Section 24. Well, you prove this by an official publication or a certified true copy. So yung official publication, ito, tingnan natin, Section 24. It may be evidenced by an official publication thereof or by a copy attested by the officer having legal custody of the record or by his deputy, accompanied, if the record is not kept in the Philippines, with a certificate that such officer has the custody. So yung official publication, you get an official publication. For example, yung official gazette. You get an official publication of the official gazette. Now, or the ordinance, local ordinance, you get an official publication of the local ordinance. O kaya kung wala kayong makuhang official publication, present a copy, but that copy must be attested, not just by anybody, but by the officer having legal custody of the record or by his deputy, and accompanied with a certificate that that officer has the custody. So, yung kung medical legal evidence yan, you go to the record section of the place where the medical legal document is kept. Okay? And how you prove it is by presenting a copy that is attested by the person, by the records custodian. Okay? Hindi lang just anybody. And what I do there is, of course, di ba sabi ko, all evidence must be proven by testimony. So, pwede yung records custodian ang mag-testify or the one who signed the medical legal document. The doctor, pwedeng siya yung mag-testify and to identify it. Now, electronic evidence, admissibility and authentication requirements. These are very technical requirements. What I want to say here is that there is one law and two rules that must be complied with for electronic evidence to be admitted. We have the Electronic Commerce Act of 2000, the rules on electronic evidence, and the revised rules on evidence. So, the general rule is that electronic documents are admissible if they comply with the rules on admissibility prescribed by the rules of court, and if they are authenticated in a manner prescribed by the rules on electronic evidence. The proponent must demonstrate the integrity and reliability of the electronic evidence. So meron ding best evidence rule for electronic evidence, and the rules provide that a printout or output readable by sight or other means shown to reflect the data accurately is considered the equivalent of an original document. Now, this is a significant departure from traditional documentary evidence. Kasi tignan mo to, a printout or output shown to reflect the data accurately is the equivalent of an original. Yung traditional documentary evidence, it's the original itself. Ito, a printout or output. Okay? And then, compliance with the rules of court, evidence must satisfy the general rules of admissibility. Dalawa, di ba? Evidence is competent and evidence is relevant. So here you have the rules on relevancy and materiality, and that as to privileged communication, the confidential nature of privileged communication is not lost solely because it is in electronic form. Therefore, the rules on privileged communication should also be observed. Otherwise, it will be excluded. Well, otherwise, it will not be deemed admitted. So ito yung, it will be incompetent. All right? Because it is excluded by the rules. Now, ito may mga technical requirements on authentication of electronic evidence. So, it says by evidence that it had been digitally signed by the person purported to have signed the same, by evidence that the appropriate security procedures or devices were applied to the document, such as encryption, passwords, and all. These are very technical. And other evidence, let me see, other evidence showing its integrity and reliability to the satisfaction of the judge. Okay? So, I will, okay. So, pwedeng testimony of a person with knowledge of the creation, storage, or transmission of the electronic document. Pwedeng sender, receiver, creator, or custodian. Evidence of the reliability of the system used to generate, store, or process the electronic data, like the testimony of the IT expert. Comparison with known authentic samples, the document's appearance, patterns, and so on, and self-authentication as provided by law or the Supreme Court rules. So meron ding rules on authentication of specific types of evidence, like for emails and text messages, social media posts, surveillance videos, and CCTV footage, and digital signatures. And then may rules on presentation of electronic evidence, important considerations, chain of custody, data privacy. Right. So it is better for you to consult the rules themselves in order to find out how to comply about this. Now, digital signatures are presumed authentic if compliant with the requirements. And the original of an electronic document is not necessarily the first copy but the one used to represent data. So, punta na tayo sa testimonial evidence. Now, ito. Qualification and disqualification of witnesses. Tatandaan ninyo, point number 36. All persons are presumed to be qualified to testify. Okay? As long as they can perceive and make known their perception to others. So soundness of mind, age, not a bar if capable of perception or communication. Kaya, under the rules on examination of child witness, ine-emphasize doon that age is not a barrier. And a child is presumed capable of testifying. Hindi siya na-disqualify because of age, as long as he can perceive, make known his or her perception, and of course, as long as the child understands the importance of an oath. Now, may mga disqualifications, and this is what we call spousal immunity. Ito yung mga exclusions. So a spouse cannot testify against his or her spouse without the consent of the latter. Pero may mga exceptions. So ito yung tinatawag na disqualification by reason of marriage. Husband or wife cannot testify against another without the consent of the affected spouse. There are two exceptions. In a civil case by one against the other, syempre, because a civil case was filed, like a legal separation case or a case for support, then a spouse can testify against the other. And then the other one, a criminal case for a crime committed by one against the other or the latter's direct descendants or ascendants. Okay. In which case, a spouse may testify against the other. Okay. The reason for spousal immunity is to protect the relationship of the spouses. Kaya lang syempre, na-violate na yung relationship na to because of the crime committed or because of uh, the basis for the civil case, like failure to give support or the ground for legal separation. So wala nang relationship to protect, pwedeng mag-testify yung one spouse against the other. Now, we have another rule and that's point 38, dead man's statute. May mga bagay na hindi pwedeng mag-testify ang isang tao tungkol sa sinabi ng isang tao who is at the time when he was still alive, but when the person, the witness is testifying now, the person who gave the statement has already passed away. Eh, hindi na niya makokontra kasi namatay na siya. So this is what we call dead man statute. And this applies with regard to claims against the estate of the deceased. The same rule applies to the estate of insane persons. Now, this is a strict application. A proposed witness will not be allowed to testify on a matter allegedly told to him by someone who has already died by the time the testimony is to be presented, because the latter can no longer contradict the statement of the proposed witness. Halimbawa, Maria filed a lawsuit against the estate of Juan, her deceased business partner. Maria claims that before Juan's death, they had an oral agreement where Juan promised to give her his share of the business upon his passing. Now, Maria wants to testify in court about this specific conversation she had with Juan where he allegedly made this promise. Under this rule, the dead man statute, Maria would be disqualified from testifying about the oral agreement she allegedly had with Juan before his death because he can no longer contradict the same. So sa privileged communication naman, point 39, we have, this is about confidentiality that is protected by law. So point 40 talks about attorney-client privilege, communications made by the client to a lawyer in his professional capacity. With respect to this, the attorney cannot be compelled to testify. Pero ito, pag legal advice on something that has already taken place. All right. Now, physician-patient privilege. Oh, matters learned by the physician, information necessary for treatment. This cannot be the subject matter of a testimony by the physician against the patient. Ganun din sa priest and penitent. Confessions made in professional capacity cannot be the priest cannot be compelled to make a disclosure. Pagdating naman sa public officers, communications made in official confidence cannot be divulged by the public officer if it is a matter of national security. Parental and filial privilege, parents and children cannot be compelled to testify against each other, all right, except for a crime or an offense committed by one against the other. And the journalist privilege, the journalist cannot be compelled to disclose the source of his or her information if it relates to national security. Pagdating naman sa examination of witnesses, we have the order of examination. First, direct examination, followed by cross-examination, redirect and recross examination of one witness. Ang direct examination naman is the examination that we elicit from our own witness. Cross-examination is examination that is conducted by the opposing counsel. So this is generally for the purpose of testing accuracy and credibility of the witness. In civil cases, it is not limited to matters on direct examination. In criminal cases, when the accused testifies, he can only be cross-examined on matters stated on his direct examination. So under Rule 115, Section 1D, the accused has the right to testify as a witness in his own behalf but subject to cross-examination on matters covered by direct examination. But if the witness is not the accused, then he can be asked on any matter as long as it is relevant. Leading questions. Ang leading question, these are the questions in which the answer is supplied by the question. For example, are you related? Are you related to the accused in this case? Okay, that's leading because the question is answerable by yes or no, and the answer is already included in the question. The direct examination way of saying that, or the open-ended way of saying that, meaning hindi leading, is what is your relationship with the accused, right? So magkaiba yun. Magkaiba yung what is your relationship with the accused, not leading, compared to are you related to the accused? O mas leading pa, are you the uncle of the accused? Mas leading pa yun. Kasi talagang sinabi na yung sagot dun sa tanong. Alright? Leading questions. When are these allowed on direct examination? So generally not allowed but allowed in certain situations. A, on preliminary matters, like on introductory matters. Or where were you in the evening of January 1, 2025? And nilagay na yung date, nilagay na yung tanong na evening, yung time. Pero preliminary matters, so that's allowed. Letter B, when there is difficulty in getting direct and intelligible answers from a witness who is ignorant, a child of tender years, is of feeble mind, or a deaf, pwedeng leading. Letter C, unwilling or hostile witness, pwedeng leading questions. And D, a witness who is an adverse party or an officer, director, or managing agent of a private or public corporation or partnership, which is an adverse party. Okay? Now, 51, impeachment of adverse witness. You impeach the adverse witness by contradictory evidence, by prior inconsistent statements, by general reputation for truth, interest, bias, or conviction of a crime. So ang sabi dito sa section 11, Rule 132, a witness may be impeached by the party against whom he or she was called, by contradictory evidence, by evidence that his or her general reputation for truth, honesty, or integrity is bad, or by evidence that he or she made at other times statements inconsistent with his or her present testimony, but not by evidence of particular wrongful acts, except that it may be shown by the examination of the witness or record of the judgment that he or she has been convicted of an offense. So for example, the case is the issuance of a bouncing check. It refers to a particular bouncing check. You cannot present evidence that the accused has issued 1,000 other bouncing checks before this case because that's irrelevant. All right? So you can only impeach him with respect to this present case, but not by evidence of particular wrongful acts. Pero kung na-convict na siya ng bouncing checks, then you can present that. Alright? So dito, section 14, which is item number 52, prior inconsistent statements. Big sabihin, yung witness, may sinabi siya dati, which is inconsistent dun sa sinasabi niya ngayon sa court. What do? You lay down the predicate, you confront the witness with the statement. and you ask him, sinabi mo ba to talaga? You cannot confront a witness with evidence that is not coming from him. Okay? That is not his prior inconsistent statement. So ito, Section 14. Before a witness can be impeached by evidence that he or she made at other times statements inconsistent with his present testimony, the statements must be related to him or her. Sabihin mo sa kanya, do you remember having stated this? With the circumstances of the times and places and the persons present. So pagkatapos mo siyang i-confront nung statement niya, tanungin mo siya, sabi, and he must be asked whether he or she made such statements, and if so, allowed to explain them. If the statements be in writing, show the written statement before asking the witness a question. Okay, para fair, show him the statement that he allegedly made. If he admits, then let him explain. All right, so that is impeaching the evidence, the witness of the adverse party. Pero ito, item 53, impeachment of one's own witness. Generally, this is not allowed unless the witness is hostile or unwilling. Sabi sa section 13, except with respect to witnesses referred to in paragraphs D and E of section 10 of this rule, the party presenting the witness is not allowed to impeach his or her credibility. The witness may be considered an unwilling or hostile witness if so declared by the court upon adequate showing of his or her adverse interest, unjustified reluctance to testify, or his or her having misled the party into calling him or her to the witness stand. So dapat i-declare ng court that this is a hostile or adverse witness. To continue, the unwilling or hostile witnesses so declared, or the witness who is an adverse party, meaning kalaban, may be impeached by the party presenting him or her in all respects as if he or she had been called by the adverse party, except by evidence of his or her bad character. He or she may be impeached and cross-examined by the adverse party, but such cross-examination must only be on the subject matter of his or her examination in chief. Okay? And then item number 54, refreshing the memory. Ito yung you will allow a witness to refer to a document, to a memorandum, para maalala niya. So a witness may be allowed to refresh his or her memory respecting a fact by anything written or recorded by himself or under his direction. Okay? At any time when the fact was fresh in his mind, or he knew that the same was correctly written or recorded. In such case, the writing or record must be produced and inspected by the adverse party, who may, if it chooses, cross-examine the witness upon it and read it in evidence. A witness may also testify from such a writing or record, though he or she retains no recollection of the facts, if she is able to swear that the writing or record correctly stated the transaction when made, but such evidence must be received with caution. So pwede niyang i-refresh yung memory niya, papakita mo muna sa kalaban. Dapat siya yung gumawa ng dokumento. Hindi yung another person. Okay? And then, or it was made upon the direction of the witness. Exclusion and separation. Ito, the court may order exclusion or separation of witness. Maaring ipalabas ng court yung other witnesses who have not yet testified para hindi nila marinig yung testimony of this person who will now be testifying. Okay? It does not authorize, the rule does not authorize exclusion of a party who is a natural person, duly designated representative of a juridical entity, which is a party to a case, a person whose presence is essential to the presentation of a party's cause, or a person authorized by statute to be present. So pwede ring the court may cause a witness to be kept separate and to be prevented from conversing with another until lahat na examine na. So instances of exclusion of witnesses, sometimes very sensitive yung matter of the testimony like child abuse or sexual abuse. In that case, ipapa-exclude ng court yung other witnesses, even the public. Okay? Pwedeng ipa-exclude ng court. Now, item number 56, rights and obligations of a witness under Rule 132, Section 3. The witness must be protected from irrelevant questions and must be able to avail of the privilege against self-incrimination. So madami to sa Section 3. So sabi, he must be protected from irrelevant, improper, or insulting questions, from harsh or insulting demeanor. Hindi dapat makipag-argumento yung abogado dun sa witness. Not to be detained longer than the interests of justice require. Not to be examined except only as to matters pertinent to the issue. Not to give an answer which will tend to subject him or her to a penalty for an offense unless otherwise provided by law. Ito yung privilege against self-incrimination. 5. Not to give an answer which will tend to degrade his or her reputation unless it be to the very fact in issue. A witness must answer to the fact of his or her previous final conviction for an offense. Okay. Now, let's talk about admissions and confessions. Ito yung sinasabi ko kaninang admission, judicial admission, hindi na kailangan ng ebidensya. So under Rule 130, Section 27, an admission is an acknowledgement of a fact. And therefore, the admission may be given in evidence against a party. Okay. So, pero admissions made in court, judicial admissions, do not have to be proven. So, itong admissions and confessions na to, ito yung tinutukoy na admissions out of court. Okay, so tingnan natin yung item 58. May mga disputable presumptions unless it is a judicial admission, in which case the presumption will no longer be disputable. Item 59. An offer of compromise. In civil cases, an offer of compromise is not an admission of liability. In criminal cases, as a general rule, an offer of compromise is an implied admission of guilt except in these situations. Number 1, quasi-offenses or criminal negligence like yung mga reckless imprudence resulting in homicide, resulting in damage to property. These are not admissible as evidence of guilt because hindi naman ito intentional. So an offer to pay damages is seen as an act of goodwill and a desire to avoid litigation rather than an admission of criminal culpability. Second, there are cases which are allowed by law to be compromised, criminal in nature, katulad ng private offenses where the law specifically allows for compromise affecting private interest. Okay. These are exceptions rather than the rule. Examples might include certain forms of defamation or slight physical injuries, where a settlement can lead to the dismissal of the criminal case with the consent of the court and the offended party. Item number 60, confessions. Ito naman yung confession out of court. Acknowledgement of guilt. It must be voluntary. Under Section 34, the declaration of an accused acknowledging his or her guilt of the offense charged, or any offense necessarily included therein, may be given in evidence against him. Kaya lang, yung confession na to, the accused, well, because this is a criminal case, must be assisted by counsel. Counsel must explain all the consequences of making a confession. Okay. And then the accused must voluntarily know the consequences and voluntarily confess, right? Despite knowledge of the consequences. May rule tayo na tinatawag, Section 32 and Section 29 of Rule 130. Ito yung res inter alios acta rule. Acts or declarations of a party cannot prejudice another unless there is privity or conspiracy as between them. An exception is an admission by a co-conspirator during the conspiracy and in furtherance of the conspiracy. Another exception is an admission by a partner or agent within the scope of authority and during the existence of the relationship. Another exception, admission by silence. When a party is silent, when he should have spoken, this is considered an admission by silence. Okay, now let's talk about the hearsay rule. Well, hearsay is an out-of-court statement that is offered to prove the truth of a matter asserted, and that matter asserted is the evil to be avoided. So, under Section 37 of Rule 130, hearsay is a statement other than the one made by the declarant while testifying at a trial or hearing. Ibig sabihin, it is made outside the court, but it is offered to prove the truth of the facts asserted therein. So ito yung one person is saying, sinabi sa akin na ganito. Okay. Now, a statement is an oral or written assertion or a nonverbal conduct of a person if it is intended by him or her as an assertion. Hearsay evidence is inadmissible except as otherwise provided in these rules. And what is the rationale for hearsay exclusion? Bakit hindi pwedeng ma-admit ang hearsay evidence? Because the person who made the statement cannot be cross-examined. His demeanor cannot be observed, and his statement was not made under oath. So how do you distinguish between hearsay and an original evidence? If offered for a purpose other than the truth of an assertion, it is not hearsay. For example, to show knowledge, it is not hearsay. Eh sabi nung taong ganito, eto daw. So, to show knowledge, it is not hearsay. But you are not offering it to prove the truth. Ito yung sinasabi, I am presenting this to prove the tenor but not the truth. Alright? So the witness said something, though the statement is not presented to prove the truth, but only as to the fact that this is what the witness said. Alright? Now that is not hearsay, it is original evidence. Section 38 talks about dying declaration. This is a declaration made under the belief of imminent death concerning the cause of death of a person who is dying. So ito, Section 38, the declaration of a dying person made under the consciousness of an impending death may be received in any case where his or her death is the subject of inquiry as evidence of the cause and surrounding circumstances of such death. The premise of this is that a dying person will not be telling a lie. Kasi alam niya na mamamatay siya. He will be telling the truth. So, and it is concerning the cause of his death. Ang taong sumaksak sa akin ay si XYZ. And he said that when he was under the consciousness that he was dying. That is admissible. Now, another evidence that is hearsay yun kasi the person has already died by the time the statement is presented in court. Declaration against interest. Okay, this is a declaration against pecuniary, proprietary, penal interest, and the declarant is already unavailable. So sabi sa section 40, the declaration made by a person deceased or unable to testify against the interests of the declarant, yung sa kanya mismo, if the fact asserted in the declaration was, at the time it was made, so far contrary to the declarant's own interest, that a reasonable person in his or her position would not have made the declaration unless he believed it to be true, may be received in evidence against himself or his successors in interest. A statement tending to expose the declarant to criminal liability and offered to exculpate the accused is not admissible unless corroborating circumstances clearly indicate the trustworthiness of the statement. Item number 70, act or declaration about prejudice. This refers to relationship ante litem motam before the litigation and the declarant is unavailable. So, the act or declaration of a person deceased or unable to testify. So, ganun din person is deceased, is unable to testify, he made this act or declaration regarding the pedigree of another person related to him by birth, adoption, or marriage, or in the absence thereof, with whose family he or she was so intimately associated as to be likely to have an accurate information concerning pedigree, may be received in evidence where it occurred before the controversy and the relationship between the two persons as shown by evidence other than such act or declaration. The word pedigree includes relationship, family genealogy, birth, marriage, death, the dates, when and where the places where these facts occurred, and the names of the relatives. It also embraces facts of family history intimately connected with pedigree. And we have family reputation or tradition regarding pedigree. This is before the controversy and made by family members. The reputation or tradition existing in a family previous to the controversy in respect to the pedigree of any one of its members may be received in evidence if the witness testifying be also a member of the family, either by consanguinity, affinity, or adoption. Entries in family Bibles or other family books or charts, engravings on rings, family portraits, and the like may be received as evidence of pedigree. And then we also have common reputation, matters of general interest like marriage, birth, or death. Common reputation existing previous to the controversy as to boundaries or customs affecting lands in the community. And reputation as to events of general history important to the community or respecting marriage or moral character may be given in evidence. Monuments and inscriptions in public places may be received as evidence of common reputation. Section 44, Rule 130, part of the res gestae. These are spontaneous utterances or statements accompanying unequivocal acts. So statements made by a person while a startling occurrence is taking place, or immediately prior or subsequent thereto under stress of excitement caused by the occurrence with respect to the circumstances thereof, may be given in evidence as part of the res gestae. So also statements accompanying an equivocal act material to the issue and giving it a legal significance may be received as evidence of the res gestae. Now, records of regularly conducted business activity. These are in the regular course of business at or near the time of transaction, and it may be the custodian's testimony. So, a memorandum, a report, record or data, compilation of acts, events, conditions, opinions, or diagnosis made by writing, typing, electronic, optical, or other similar means at or near the time of or from transmission or supply of information by a person with knowledge thereof, and kept in the regular course or conduct of business activity. As such was the regular practice to make the memorandum, report, record, or data compilation by electronic, optical, or similar means, all of which are shown by the testimony of the custodian or other qualified witnesses, is exempted from the rule on hearsay evidence. Entries in official records. These are entries made by a public officer in the performance of duty. Entries in official records made by the public officer in the performance of duty or by a person in the performance of a duty specially enjoined by law are prima facie evidence of the facts stated therein. For example, entries in the police blotter, for example, and learned treatises established as reliable authority by expert testimony or a judicial notice. So this refers to a published treatise, periodical, or pamphlet on a subject matter of history, law, science, or art. This is admissible as tending to prove the truth of a matter stated therein. If the court takes judicial notice, or a witness expert in the subject testifies that the writer of the statement is recognized in his or her profession or calling as an expert. All right, so you want to present a book containing a statement made by an expert, it has to be proven that the person who made that statement is an expert in the subject. Testimony or deposition at a former proceeding. This can be presented only when the one who made the testimony or deposition is unavailable as a witness, and you have the same parties, the same subject matter, and the same opportunity to cross-examine. And this refers to a former proceeding. Okay? So the testimony or deposition of a witness deceased or out of the Philippines, or who cannot with due diligence be found or is unavailable or otherwise unable to testify, given in a former proceeding or case, judicial or administrative, involving the same parties and subject matter, may be given in evidence against the adverse party who had the opportunity to cross-examine him or her. So ang importante dyan, opportunity to cross-examine. And then you have commercialists and the like in trade journals and directories. Evidence of statements of matters of interest to persons engaged in an occupation contained in a list, register, periodical, or other published compilation is admissible as tending to prove the truth of any relevant matter so stated if that compilation is published for use by persons engaged in that occupation and is generally used and relied upon by them. All right. And then 79, we have the residual exception. Bago to, this is introduced by the 2019 amendments. And this is another exception to the hearsay rule, and it is known as the catch-all exception. It is a provision in the rules of evidence allowing for the admission of hearsay statements that do not fall under any of the specifically enumerated exceptions, but it still possesses sufficient guarantees of trustworthiness and probative value. Section 50 states, a statement not specifically covered by any of the foregoing exceptions having equivalent circumstantial guarantees of trustworthiness is admissible if the court determines. So ito yung mga requirements. A, the statement is offered as evidence of a material fact. B, the statement is more probative on the point for which it is offered than any other evidence which the proponent can procure through reasonable efforts. And C, the general purposes of the rules and interests of justice would be best served by the admission of the statement. So, magbibigay tayo ng example dito, a scenario. So, si Mr. De La Cruz was a key witness to a hit-and-run accident. He gave a detailed sworn and videotape statement to the police the day after the incident, clearly identifying the make, model, and license plate number of the vehicle and describing the driver. In his statement, he also mentioned feeling unwell due to a pre-existing heart condition. So a week later, before the trial, Mr. De La Cruz passed away due to a sudden and severe heart attack, unrelated to the accident. There were no other eyewitnesses who could provide the same level of detail. During the trial against the alleged hit-and-run driver, the prosecution seeks to introduce Mr. De La Cruz's sworn and videotape statement. This statement doesn't perfectly fit into any of the traditional hearsay exceptions, like dying declaration, as he wasn't under the belief of his imminent death related to the accident, or excited utterance, as it was given the day after. Okay? So, pwede siya to be admitted The prosecution might argue for the admissibility of Mr. De La Cruz's statement under the residual exception rule by demonstrating the following: equivalent circumstantial guarantees of trustworthiness. There was a sworn statement. It was given under oath. It carried a legal obligation to tell the truth. There was the videotape. The recording provides a visual and auditory record of Mr. De La Cruz's demeanor and the context in which the statement was given, reducing the possibility of misinterpretation or fabrication. And then he gave a detailed account, specific details about the vehicle, the driver, suggesting a reliable recollection of the event. And he had no apparent motive to falsify. There's no indication that he had any reason to lie or misidentify the vehicle or driver. And also, it was spontaneous. While not immediately after the event, it was given the day after, likely while his memory was still fresh. Next, the evidence is material. His identification of the vehicle and driver is crucial and highly material, directly relevant to proving the guilt of the accused. And then it has more probative value than other evidence available. Walang ibang witness who could provide the same level of identification. The only other evidence might be circumstantial or less direct. So, may mapuprove yung statement ni Mr. De La Cruz than other evidence. And number 4, furtherance of the general purposes of the rules and interests of justice. Number 5, pretrial notice. The prosecution would have had to provide the defense with sufficient advance notice of intention to offer this statement under the residual exception rule, including a copy of the sworn statement and the videotape statement and the reasons for its admissibility. The prosecution would give the defense time to prepare their objections. And then the court will decide whether the statement of Mr. De La Cruz will be given probative value. Okay, so in this example, the residual exception acts as a necessary tool to allow potentially crucial and reliable evidence to be considered by the court when the specific circumstances don't align perfectly with the traditional hearsay exceptions. Now, opinion and character evidence, point 81. As a general rule, witnesses cannot testify about their opinions. They can testify only on matters of fact. Exception, point 82, expert opinions. Because of their special knowledge, skill, experience, and training, they are allowed to express their opinions, okay, on certain matters. Point 83, ordinary opinion. This is allowed to identify a person's handwriting, mental sanity, impressions on emotions, behavior, or appearance. Point 84, character evidence. Generally, this is not admissible to prove conduct on a particular occasion. Okay. Pero, point 85, in criminal cases, the accused may prove good moral character. The prosecution may rebut if the accused opens the door. And then point 86, character in civil cases. This is allowed only when character is directly in issue. So point 87, in civil and criminal cases, not admissible until character is impeached. Testimony as to reputation or opinion and specific instances of conduct. Let's go to presentation of evidence under Rule 132.88. Offer of evidence. Okay. You state the purpose for which the evidence is offered. It is crucial for appellate review. For a party who would like to bring up the case if he is not contented with the decision. For testimonial evidence, the offer of evidence is made at the time the testimony is to be presented. Okay. For documentary or real evidence, the offer is made after the evidence, all of this evidence is presented before the plaintiff rests his case. Okay, so when to make the offer, Section 35, oral testimony is offered at the time the witness is called. Documentary or object evidence is offered after presentation of testimonial evidence. Point 90, objections must be made immediately after the offer is made. 91, grounds for objections must be specific. For example, the defendant is objecting to Exhibit A on the ground of inadmissibility or on the ground of irrelevance. Dapat sabihin ano yung basis for the objection. Point 92, the judge will immediately rule in open court after the objection is made. Point 93, striking out testimony. If the witness was able to answer before an objection is made, or when the testimony becomes inadmissible, a party may move for the striking out of the answer. Now, burden of proof and presumptions. Point 94. So, burden of proof, burden of evidence. Ang burden of proof is the duty of a party to present evidence on the facts in issue necessary to establish their claim or defense. It does not shift. So the plaintiff has the burden of proof because he is the one who makes the assertion. Siya yung nag-file ng case. Now, burden of evidence, nag-shift. This is the duty of a party to present evidence sufficient to establish a fact in issue or to overcome a prima facie case. So burden of evidence, it shifts. First, nasa plaintiff, and then later on, nasa defendant. And point 95, conclusive presumptions versus disputable presumptions. Conclusive presumptions cannot be contradicted, such as estoppel and in pais. Disputable presumptions may be overcome by contradictory or contrary evidence, such as presumption of innocence or presumption of regularity of official acts. So this ends the 95 things to remember about evidence. Now, I would now like to address you, law student, law graduate. This list provides a robust framework. Remember to read the actual rules of court, consult your review materials, practice applying these concepts to hypothetical situations. I pray for your success in your studies and in the bar exams. This is Attorney Chato Olivas of Easy Law Online, making the law easier to understand. And I would like to share my favorite Bible verse with you. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. This is from Micah chapter 6, verse 8. God bless you.